Hi, this is Kendra from Pencil and Pigment, and today I'm going to be doing a beginning charcoal tutorial video for you today. It's going to be broken up into sections. I will timestamp that in the description box below so you can find the things that are, more relevant to you, or if you're already familiar with something, you can skip that section and save some time. This is probably going to be a long video. So let's get started. I want to first talk about the supplies. And the first supplies you're going to need with beginning charcoal is the actual charcoal itself. Now there is a variety of types of charcoal. Let's hope my cat doesn't interrupt this. She's given me the eye. Okay, and the first one I want to talk about is vine charcoal, because there are pros and cons to all these different products. And so I want to talk about that in case that'll help you make decisions and figure out what it is you want to buy, purchase, use, borrow, however you want to go about this process. Maybe you even want to make your own. So the first charcoal I am talking about is willow or vine charcoal. Now I don't own all these different types, so I am going to put photos up as I do this video showing you pictures of the wide variety. This is something I own that's old from a unlabeled Ziploc, so I'm not sure what this is. It's either vine or willow. I can't really tell. These are very symmetrical sticks. So that's going to be how this video is set up. Vine and willow charcoal is made from willow branches and grapevine. These are burnt sort of in a low heat to a precise degree of hardiness. Now the pros of this format of charcoal would be that there's no binding agent, so this is really easy to use and erase. I am going to be using, for this video, I have a Lectern sketchbook. This is one of their newer ones. It's the 150 gram weight paper, A5. It's in yellow. I want to demo these as I discuss them so you can understand what it is I'm talking about. So here is the charcoal. And you can see it is a very sort of middle-ranged. When I talk about value, I'm not talking about price. I'm talking about color value. It is sort of a middle range gray. I'm going to smear it now with my finger. You can see how much lifts when I smear it. So erasing this product, I'm just going to be using a high polymer Pentel eraser cap. For this demo, and you can see that about 95% of it erases. So that would be one of the pros to this format of charcoal if you are interested. The other thing would be, because this is great for erasing, this is really great for trying new subject matter and sketching out your designs prior to applying a different medium such as paint. So if you want to pre-sketch a layout of someone and make sure you're not cutting off the top of their head or scrunching their nose to the side if you're doing a portrait, for example, this can be great with laying that out and then painting over the top. Another great thing for this format of charcoal would be just working on composition and really fast sketches. So if you want to build confidence, if you are doing figure drawing and your figure is moving every 1 minute, 5 minutes, 30 seconds, sketching things out really quickly, really roughly with this works great. It doesn't, there isn't a lot of pressure applied to the page to get this to come off, so you can be really quick and fast with the sketching. I would say because of this format, some of sort of the caveats, the cons would be this breaks really easily. As I showed you in my bag, I have super teeny tiny pieces that are really hard to use and grip. If you drop it, it'll break. If you pinch it too hard, you can snap it and break it. It's very, very delicate. I would say that if you are using this and trying to get really fine detail, it's going to be difficult. It's really hard to sort of sharpen and fine tune the point of vine and willow charcoal. So this is better for bigger lines, for sort of bigger illustrations. Apology there for going right off the page. It's going to be really hard to get fine lines with this. So just know if you work with really precise detail, this may not be the format you want. This is very affordable, available to buy online, in person. Most art supply stores sell some form of vine or willow charcoal. Lots of different companies make tons of different types. It's very, very budget. I live in the United States, so I'm going to be doing everything in US dollar, and it's about, on average, $1 a stick. And the sticks are larger. Keep in mind, I only have broken pieces, unfortunately. If you want differentiation between vine and willow charcoal specifically, I would say that vine probably breaks less and is darker than willow, but that could just be the brands I've used. And as with all of this, sort of take it. Supplies and ingredient lists aren't really forthcoming. They're considered proprietary by the companies. So just consider what I say with a grain of salt, and everything is subject to change by the companies or manufacturers at any time. So what it is now could be different a year from now, 6 months from now, as you watch, read this, or find out more information if things get published, which is always awesome when companies decide to publish information. The next charcoal I want to talk about is called Knit Room. This is a little different than vine and willow charcoal, and I'm going to discuss why. So this is the one I use regularly, probably the most when I create with charcoal. And this is, it's kept with like wood cell structure within it, and it is made of wood and other organic materials in a low oxygen environment. So the pros of using this would be, like willow and charcoal, there are different sizes and circumferences. So the one I have here is pretty thick. As you can see, it's a little bit thicker. This is the 8mm. This is a little bit thicker than a pencil, but it comes much, much thicker if you are interested and you work very, very large. That is an option. You can also get this sort of HB, 2B. You can get this in darker shades. It has a softer value range. So this is a little bit more durable. I would say it's less likely to break. Let me show you a new stick. I want to show you how durable this is. So I'm going to break one on camera. If I drop one from my height, I'm about 5'3", 5'4". If I drop one from my height, it will break. So you saw how easy that was for me to break, but this is much stronger than vine and willow. So keep in mind, if you have an awesome grip or you drop things a lot, maybe going with a thicker item like this could be a little bit more helpful to you if you like a larger portion to hold. I will show you what this looks like. So this is the Knit Room. Here is the vine. They look different. Now, this one is a cooler gray. This one is a much warmer gray. I would say this one also produces more dust. That is another factor to consider, is the fallout and the mess of creating with charcoal. I really like this one because I can get really, really light value ranges. I am heavy-handed when I create. So being able to cover a portion of the page while being heavy-handed and having it be lighter in color, lighter in value, is really, really helpful for me personally. Now, yeah, I broke that. The other thing about this is this can be sharpened to a fine point. You can use sandpaper to sharpen these. You can use grinders. You can use like a really fine grater of some point and grate this into a finer tip point if you want to try and work smaller. As you can see, I broke it so there is kind of an edge. So if I want to get fine lines with this edge, I can. It's a little bit finer than the vine lines. If I go darker, they get a little wider. Okay, so cons to the knit room charcoal would be that it does cost more. I would say it's not readily available in store. I purchased mine online through Amazon. Yeah, so you take the good, you take the bad. There is less fallout. If I go to, let's see, wipe a portion of this and blend, you can see that. If I go to erase a portion, let me do that. I don't think these erase as good as Vine. I'd say you can get about 90% pickup with erasing. There is still going to be residual left on the page. So just be cognizant of that when you're creating with this charcoal, that if you make a mistake, you can't lift it all up. Okay, that's just something to be cognizant of when creating. Let's talk about compressed charcoal. Now, compressed charcoal is made from charcoal powder that is held together with wax binders or a type of gum binder and then compressed into sticks. So you can see this is a very firm stick. This is one of the harder ones to break. It is very, very firm and strong, and often they are square shaped. They are not spherical. So when you hold it, just be mindful of that. Some of these other ones, like the knit room, have a stylus that they can fit into if you don't want to get your hands dirty. But this, I mean, you could hold the ends with a tissue or something if it's really bothersome and you don't want to have a ton of transfer mess on your fingers. So the pros of compressed charcoal would be that you can purchase a variety of packs that have different values, different strengths of color, and that comes from sort of the ratio of powdered charcoal to binder, that you can have softer ones that are darker in color and lighter ones. I'm going to push down hard. This is my compressed, this is the Vine, this is the knit room, this is the compressed. You can see this is the darkest value charcoal I own. And again, there is powder. With all of these, there is a powder residue. I would say that this is super affordable, very available in stores, online. You can find compressed charcoal. A bunch of different companies make this. So one of the cons to this, obviously, is seeing how dark it is in color. It is really hard to erase this. So you can't change your mind when you go to draw something. Now I'm going to, obviously you can be lighter with it. You don't have to be as dark as possible, but that is the benefit of the compressed charcoal. Now I'm going to smear it, and I'm going to try and erase and lift a portion of it. Maybe 60% lifts. You can still see a bunch of gray that isn't the white page. So keep that in mind. Once you lay this down in a very hard pressed manner, you will then be very, very difficult and hard pressed to lift it back off. So lay out everything with a lighter charcoal, a Vine charcoal, when creating. Make sure you have everything placed where you want it before you go in with some of the darker values, with some of the harder pressed charcoals. Something I have done with this hard charcoal is I have scraped it across the page and torn the page before. So be very, very careful with your strength when you're creating, so you don't damage the integrity of the surface that you're working on. And for beginning charcoal, the recommended surface is paper. So that's all I'm going to be discussing for this video. Now, the last format I want to be discussing is charcoal pencil. Now I have the Derwent. This one is the light. This one is the medium. And I play favorites. You can see a K right there. That means dark. So out of the three, I have used the dark the most. I've actually used one whole up of these, and they do fit in pencil extenders, which is really, really nice for using really small. So basically these are just compressed charcoal in the lead area of the pencil with the wood around it. So a pro of this type of charcoal would be that if you like to work with really clean lines, precision, you don't like holding things that break in your hands, or if you drop it, you don't have to worry about this breaking. You like to keep your hands fairly clean. This could be a great medium for you, a great presentation of this medium. They range from about $2 to $4 a piece. Again, this is US dollar. One of the cons of this format, and you might be able to see it, is sharpening. Sharpening charcoal pencils is very, very difficult. Even with hard compressed charcoal, it breaks if you use a sharpener. So what I end up doing when I sharpen these pencils is I use an X-Acto blade. I know. And I back sharpen to get the tip to be revealed. This makes it a little bit harder on the hands. It can be a little bit more difficult. It can be frustrating, the sharpening component, but let's draw with this. I want to show you how precise and dark these lines are. Again, this is the dark pencil. I will show you the difference with all three of these. So here is the Derwent Light. I'm calling that DL, Derwent Light. This would be Derwent Medium. The medium's not bad. These are a little scratchy. You should be able to hear that as I create. And then here is obviously the dark. We have the teeny tiny K that's left. Derwent Dark. Okay. And you can see there is a lot of powder. I'm going to smear a portion and then try and erase a portion. So keep in mind, even with the light, you still can't erase 100% of it. But this is just a really nice alternative for folks that prefer things in pencil format, that like working in fine detail. And these are also, I have found these online and in store. So with the darker colors, they do smudge more if you accidentally bump them. Like if I bump it and then get it on my hand and transfer, there's going to be transfer from the fingers and things. So be really, really careful when you go to create with the darker charcoal colors, that there is more smudge, more transfer, more things moving across your page if you're not careful. So it's kind of a trade-off. If you want a darker value, you need to be a little bit more careful with it. Again, with all these products that I'm talking about, what's best is what's preference to you and what you plan to make and create. So there is no right or wrong with any of this. It's just what you want to do and what you want to make with it. Now, the next art supply you're going to need is paper. And for this portion, I am going to throw up pictures of tons of different types of paper that you can look at and consider purchasing if that is something within your budget, if you have the means, the time, the wherewithal to buy paper specifically for this. But I want to give you pros and cons of all the different paper you can use with charcoal as a medium. And these are all my bits and pieces right here. Okay, so first let's decide and ask yourself what you want to choose for paper, what you are creating, what's it for. So are you just practicing quick studies, learning the medium, learning how to use charcoal? Are you using charcoal to learn another element of illustration and design like composition, line practice? Is this something for a final grade? Is it a gift? Is it art for a wall? Do you plan on working large? Do you plan on working small? Is this for fine details? All this will help you narrow down which paper might be the best paper for you to use. So let's talk, the first paper I want to talk about is newsprint paper. So the pros of newsprint would be that it's very, very budget friendly. I mean, if you only have a couple bucks and you want 500 sheets, it may cost you $10. It's very, very affordable. It's great for quick studies, for larger lines, for sweeping poses, like general composition layout. Nothing too permanent or long lasting. So if you're doing quick 30-second sketches, you don't want to be using your finest, most expensive paper. You want to use something super budget friendly. This may not even be something you're keeping. It may be something you're just referencing and trying to learn something over and over and over. Newsprint can be great for this. The cons to this paper, however, would be that it's not archival. So there's acid in this paper. It breaks down over time. It's very thin. It tears easily. You know, you can pinch it, you can buckle it. You go to erase charcoal or push down too strong and you're gonna rip and tear it and create a problem within the paper itself. So the choice is yours depending on what you're doing and creating with it. The next paper that I want to discuss would be some form of cotton paper. So most sketchbooks, loose leaf sheets, pads, spiral bound things, they will work with charcoal. Pros to all this is you have so many varieties and price points and availability to cotton paper that you can find it in any size, any format. Most of these are acid free and archival. So with the cotton paper, you will be getting a large variety of format. It'll be acid free, it'll be archival, it'll last longer, it'll be more durable under pressure and stress of creating, if you're doing layers or practicing for details. If you want to keep it long term, then a cotton paper would be the way to go. Some of the cons would be cost. You're going to pay more for cotton paper than you are for newsprint. That kind of goes without saying. Newsprint is just the cheapest. But I think with the variety and things like that, you can kind of decide based on what you're working on. If it's for a class, if it's for home, if it's hobby, if it's art. You know, what's best is what's preference to you. So the last paper I want to talk about is specifically charcoal pastel paper. So this paper surface is specifically made for this medium. So the pros is very detailed. You can do very intricate work. It's great for career-minded artists and creators. Perfect for selling commissions. If you're doing an art commission that you're selling that is of a charcoal picture, charcoal paper would probably be the preferred format for that. Hanging in art galleries, things like that, anything for selling, I would recommend you use specifically designed paper. Now, keep in mind with this, the cons are going to be cost. So while you can use this paper for other dry mediums like pastels and graphite and stuff, the cost per sheet is going to be way more. So typically, you want a paper that has sort of a mid-weight that's slightly textured for charcoal. Strathmore makes a charcoal drawing paper. Canson and Mi Tientes, the drawing paper there, those individual sheets would be perfect. There's sort of a small tooth texture to it. Now, it's not to say that you can't draw on smooth paper. You absolutely can draw on smooth paper. I've done it lots of times. Let me show you. So this book right here is the Hanamulla Cappuccino book. So it is a colored substrate. I'm not going to be getting into that for this video, but you can see that you can create charcoal illustrations on this paper. There is no tooth. It is perfectly smooth. That'll get us into the next product recommended for use. I want to show you some more. This is the Lectern 1917. This is their old sketchbook. This is in the A4 size, so this is larger. I'm more zoomed out, but you can see there is zero texture to this paper. It is one of the smoothest papers I've ever used. I will link these two sketchbook tours. I really like doing portraits with charcoal, as you can see. But you can create a huge value range on plain white paper, and it doesn't have to be super textured. Again, I spray them and I place paper between them because I have some on the opposing page as well. So to wrap up paper as a surface for creating on, just keep in mind that paper qualities, thickness, you want to look at GSM over LB, so you want to look at grams per square meter over pound I have a dedicated video to that on why you should, but the short answer is it's more accurate if you only go by GSM and not by pound. So you want something within a weight that can handle all the layers and different things that you plan on doing with your art. Thicker paper may be more ideal if you are doing large applications with more pressure. So acid-free paper is better for long-term. Paper that is marked light fast for finished pieces will prevent fading over time. So like the Canson Mitienes paper that I mentioned, Derwent makes a specific light fast paper. Read the front covers of what you are purchasing, read the reviews of everything you go to buy. If you can't get in store, if you can get in store, feel texture. Ask a sales clerk in person if you can get to a store and see what they recommend, what they've used, and what looks and feels nice to you for what you're creating. The next product I want to talk about for creating with charcoal would be erasers. So the ideal eraser for creating with charcoal would be the first one I laid down. It is this one. This is the kneaded eraser. So the kneaded eraser is actually made from unvulcanized rubber, and sometimes it's called a putty eraser, but the purpose of these is they are malleable, they're stretchy, and they can be moved. So if I go to clean my charcoal, I now have charcoal on this eraser, okay? My eraser is now dirty, but if I knead it and smear it around and move it around, my eraser is now clean and I can keep creating. I can fill this eraser with as much charcoal particles, pigment, dust as possible in this format. You can shape it to any shape you want. If you want to create fine tips for erasing, you can do things like this. You can create sort of the rolling pin style. If you just want to lift some loose dust, charcoal dust, off your page without lightening up your illustration too much, you can create something like this, balls, squares, whatever you want. I have found, because I have done a lot of charcoal creation, that sometimes when I go to do fine point erasing and lifting of the charcoal, I need something stronger that's more firm, and I have found that this stick eraser or any type of fine point eraser is really, really helpful. But again, what you already own can work. Keep in mind though, if I go to erase charcoal with a standard eraser, okay, I now have the charcoal on my eraser. So if I then go to erase something else elsewhere, I'm going to transfer charcoal onto my page. So if you're going to use a standard rubber or gum eraser or something like that, keep in mind you might have to clean it between uses. I rub it on a cloth, a cotton cloth, like a face wash, and that will clean off the edge between uses so I don't transfer any of the charcoal around and get it elsewhere on my page. Pros of the kneaded eraser would be that these are pretty much anywhere from $1 US to $2 US. A bunch of different companies make these. A lot of stores sell them, even craft stores sell these. And they're great for, even if you're not really erasing, lifting a lot of the particle dust. Some of the cons to this is if you have dust or during the summertime your pets are shedding, you have to be very careful and mindful that those hairs don't stick into this eraser. If you drop this eraser on the floor and you haven't swept, it's going to pick up all the particles, everything. So be very, very careful how you store this and keep this. I store mine far away so it stays clean. I have a couple different ones. This one I use more. You can tell it's a different color. It's dirtier. So Prismacolor makes one, Pentel makes one. I watched a video where someone said they cleaned theirs with dish soap. Like these get so full they almost get black. And if you have found a way to clean it without buying a new one, that could be interesting. If you live in certain climates, if you live in really, really hot climates, do not store this above certain temperatures. It will get way too soft. If you live in a very, very cold temperature, if you live in Arctic regions, this is going to be very, very hard and firm. So this is temperature sensitive. That is something to be cognizant of. And if you live in an extreme weather, this may not be worth it, worth the hassle. I'm just saying, it's just something to be mindful of when using this eraser. The last product I would recommend, it's not required, but maybe based on the art that you're making, it may be for you. And that's some form of spray fixative. I'm gonna throw up some other photos of different types because there is a wide variety. This happens to be the one that I own. So this is the only one that I can show you in person on this video without throwing pictures up. So, spray fixative. It is a liquid spray. More times than not, you'll find it aerosolized. And this sticks, it adheres, it affixes the charcoal to the page. So it doesn't lift or smear off as easily. So this is a clear liquid. It is made from resin and casein. And there is such a huge variety. I will link a really good article from Jackson Art's blog where they do a huge comparison between a ton of different fixative sprays. I may end up changing brands, but this product just, it varies wildly in price. So anywhere from like $8 US to typically $20 US, but I did see a can that was almost 30. So I don't really know what that's about. Cons to spray fixative. So why would you not want to adhere your art? If you are sensitive to smells and sprays, this is a high concentration of narcotic. So if you do high levels of spraying and you are overhead breathing this, you can get headache, fatigue, dizziness, nausea. For recommendation, always spray in a well-ventilated area away from pets and kids. I go outside and I leave my sketchbook to air out as best as possible for about 10 minutes. We live where there's a ton of rain, so what I do is I spray next to an open window or open door, and then I let it sit next to that window or door that's open for 10 minutes, where the direction of the rain is not coming in and hitting my sketchbook. And that's the best I can do with the weather that we have. Just be really, really careful. You want to not be downwind from where you're spraying. You do not want to get this in your eyeballs. That is a big no-no. The second option that I have seen artists use time and time again, but I don't really recommend it, is hairspray. So it is more budget friendly. It is more readily available. The chemical makeup of hairspray doesn't ensure archival quality. So over time, this can cause your illustrations and art to yellow, to break down. It doesn't have a lasting spray quality and fixative to your art. I know folks that do buy a hairspray or run out. I guess if you're doing a quick study and it's not a big deal and you're not keeping it long term, Aquanet is probably one of the more budget ones in the States to use. But just know that if you want to keep something long term, you can scan it, keep it digitally, or use a special fixative spray that specifically mentions charcoals. Now there is another spray called Workable Fixative that bears talking about. This is different from fixative and it has to say workable on it, or reworkable fixative. And what that means is you can spray it on your art, and if you decide you're not done and you want to go back in and add more charcoal, you can, and then spray it again. So some fixative sprays require a couple coats, but if it's workable, you can still go back on top of that and keep working, and then spray some more. So keep that in mind. Check out the article, see which ones Jackson Art recommends. There's pros and cons to it. Again, if you're super, super sensitive to smells, or there are things that you just can't be breathing in aerosols, this product will not work for you. I found a YouTube video on here where a woman takes Mod Podge and breaks it down and puts it with water and dilutes it heavily into a spray bottle and uses that as a fixative spray. I have no idea if that works or how long-term lasting that is, but that could be an alternative, and I will link that in the description box as well. So very quickly, I want to talk about some things you can use for blending other than your pencil. Now, a lot of these products you may already have at home, so this is why this isn't something I recommend you purchase. This is just something you may already have lying around that you may enjoy using in conjunction with charcoal. I'm going to show you what I have. I have some makeup sponges, I have a soft, and I have a very firm. Both of these blend dry media charcoal very, very well. Rubber gloves used for dishwashing are really great as a blender for charcoal, especially if you want to keep your fingers clean. A chamois, great for charcoal, for blending. I've tried washing these. Sometimes they get funky in my dryer. I try not to dry them, but these are also great. I would recommend hand washing for charcoal, for blending. Other things that can be used, any type of tissue that you use in your bathroom or for colds and noses are great for blending. Same with cotton swabs. Sometimes they're called Q-tips. These are really great for blending, especially small little tiny areas. And then you can then use the charcoal powder that is on the tip for lighter value illustration. And we will get into that with technique and demo. But other things that could be used, let me go through and look. Cotton balls, any kind of foam pad, paint brushes, makeup brushes, bore brushes, house painting brushes can be used for blending charcoal. Obviously, your fingers. Any type of cloth you have, furniture pads. So if you have some really nice like face cloth hand towels that you don't mind getting charcoal and pigment on, those are great for blending as well. Again, you don't have to rush out and buy all the things. If you have a really, really old spatula that can be cut up, the rubber from spatulas is really, really nice for blending dry media too. I now want to talk a little bit about the history of charcoal. This is such an old art medium dating back to almost 30,000 BC. And I just thought it warranted a little bit of time in this video. So basically, cavemen used this pigment for drawing on the walls of caves. And one of the oldest charcoal paintings, it's actually of a zebra. So it was found in a cave. It's called Apollo 11 in Namibia, and that is located in southwestern Africa. I'll throw up a map. In the Renaissance, charcoal was widely used, but very few works have survived because it has flaked off the canvas. So this is before they realized the benefits of the invention of and the benefits of spray fixatives and things like that. So used for art, used for medicine. The oldest known like activated charcoal used for medicine was from ancient Egyptians. It's used for camouflage, rites of passage, and it's still used by indigenous peoples today in body paint as rites of passage and different art things. So I just wanted to show you some pictures and tell you a little bit about the history of charcoal, just because it is so absolutely long and it dates back so far. I will link some additional articles because it's fascinating. If you want to continue on your history journey with this medium, I will have that available to you in the description box below. Now, this brings us to technique. I want you to learn some of the techniques that you can practice at home to build familiarity, confidence, and ideas to help create with this art medium. So there will be some overlap with some of the pen and ink techniques that I've already shown in a previous video. Hopefully that sort of familiarity will help bolster your confidence with this. Keep in mind that practice and just creating helps build confidence. The confidence helps build familiarity. The familiarity builds more practice, and practice equals progress into becoming a better artist, illustrator, creator, whatever you want to do. Let's start with the first one. And what are we going to create with? So I'm just going to grab the vine charcoal, because I assume that this is probably the most common one people have, and hatching. So hatching is the art of just drawing lines. Now you can draw thin lines, you can draw thick lines, so it'll be size and pressure for differentiation with hatching. Do you want them dark? Do you want them light? Do you want them really close together or really far apart? This is the practice with hatching. This is what it should look like. You should have tons of variety within this technique. The next technique I want to show you is called cross hatching. So you again are drawing lines of various widths, of varying values. Can you get super dark? Can you get super light? And then cross hatching, it comes across. So if you want to practice plaids, argyles, different types of lines, and again, they can be really close together, they can be really far apart, they can be light, they can be dark. This is what your page should look like with practicing cross hatching. I want to talk about contouring. So contouring sort of follows a shape. If you are drawing a circle, then contouring would follow that, and that can be done within hatching. This can also be done within cross hatching. So you're following the shape with your lines to create the shape in hatching, in cross hatching. And again, varying widths of lines. So some lines will be thicker, some will be closer together, some will be farther apart, some will be darker, some will be lighter. You can create shapes within your shapes doing this. And this is what this should look like for contour, hatching, and cross hatching. The next technique we're going to go over is stippling, and stippling is dots. And your dots can be big, they could be little, they could be big and little combined, they can be super dark, they can be really light. This is how you practice stippling. They can be very close together, and then they sort of fade out. They can be very far apart. This is stippling for adding value, for creating shape and form, for shading, for depth. You can use stippling, you can use hatching, you can use cross hatching. All of this helps create the shapes you want to draw and create. So this is what stippling will look like. It is a combination: small, large, dark, light, close together, far away. The next one I want to teach you is blending. Let's make sure the page is clean. And I'm going to draw a shape. And here is where I'm going to decide, am I going to blend with my finger? Am I going to use a cotton swab? Am I going to use a tool for this to sort of blend out the value, to soften these edges? Now look, I now have the charcoal dust, that pigment on my cotton swab. I can then use this for a lighter value to shadow my cube. But you want to practice blending. If I take a compressed charcoal and I draw with a compressed charcoal, the blending is going to look different, it's going to feel different. So practice with all the charcoal you have, that you own, and see how well they blend out. Compressed is harder to blend, but you have more on here that you can now draw another shape. That is a very soft heart. So you want to practice blending with all the supplies you have, with how you draw, how you create your subject matter, everything, and then practice. What do you like blending with more? Do you prefer tissue? Do you prefer your finger? Do you not want to have to take things with you if you draw outside? Fingers are pretty portable. The next technique to learn is lifting. So take your kneaded eraser. If you don't have a kneaded eraser, it is okay. I'm not going to come to your house, knock on your door, and tell you you're using the wrong eraser. I don't care. As long as you're creating, I'm happy that you're happy. And you want to practice lifting portions. See how much some of these can lift, what they're capable of lifting. Can you create harder lines? Maybe you don't want things so smooth. What can be erased? What can be lightened? You want to practice. If you have a kneaded eraser, using it, any eraser you have, and figure out how much can be lifted, what can be lifted, what you prefer to have lifted. And then if you want to blend back out again, blending and lifting for a single shape. Blend and lift. Maybe you don't like hard lines on the outside and you want to see if you can get rid of those. Practice with the erasers you do have. Now, if there is eraser smudge or there's charcoal smudge, a kneaded eraser helps clean this up, but so does something like a brush without too much smearing. Again, the darker it is, the more it's going to smear. So keep all this in mind when you are creating, blending, and then going back and lifting. Here's the knit room. I'm going to blend. I'm going to lift. I went over the edges. I want clean lines. Can I do that? Practice with the supplies you have. These are the techniques for creating with charcoal. The last technique I want to show you is kind of a wild one, and I'm not sure if this paper is too thick, but we're going to try it. And that is sort of doing like a relief with texture. So if you're creating on a really smooth paper and you want to add a little bit of a textural element, you could grab something that's rough and flat. I have some 60 grit sandpaper. You can place that under your paper and you can attempt to try and lift and get texture out of it versus just something smooth. It's different texture. I'm gonna go to a new page for ease here. I'm gonna put the sandpaper under here. We're gonna do a relief. This is the last technique. I'm pressing really hard. You can see the texture, whereas if I take it out and I just press down, it's just a smooth texture. So you can lay things under thinner paper that has texture and you can create some sort of interesting things that you can then blend out, lift, hatch, and create upon. This would be the last technique I would recommend you learning if this is something that interests you for texture. If not, the other techniques all work for drawing. Now, the last portion of this video is the tutorial, which may be the portion you've been waiting for this whole time, in which case I apologize that it's last. I just wanted to get through some of the basic stuff before we get to this. Now, one of the greatest things about charcoal is you don't have to worry about color. So there's no need to try and rush out and learn color theory or have some form of like decision fatigue from trying to pick colors through too many supplies or just worrying about color themes and placement. None of that's needed here. So any digital photo you take can be turned black and white with your phone and used as a reference photo for beginning charcoal. If you already have a subject matter that you really love to draw with another medium, try it now with charcoal. Practice over and over and over. It is the practice that makes us a great artist. That's it. There really is no secret ingredient. Now, I have a photo. This is royalty free and it's from Unsplash. And I will link it in the description box if you want to download it too. This photo was taken by a gentleman by the name of Avanish Kumar. and it is a beautiful set of leaves. These leaves can be used as reference for drawing for any medium, but we are going to use it today for charcoal. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select the leaf in the middle, and I'm going to turn it black and white so we can really see what the values are that are needed for this tutorial. And then I'm going to up the contrast a little bit so we have a wider value range within the shades of gray to create with. Now that we have the photo looking the way we want to, I'm going to lay out my page vertically because the leaf is vertical. And I'm just going to start and go from the top down. Now, because there is such a huge value range within this, I am going to pre-sketch this shape. It is sort of an oblong tear shape. It is pinched at the top, and then it slowly gets wider, and then it comes back and pinches again at the bottom. Now I'm going to use Vine Charcoal for layout. You can use pencil if you prefer pencil that lifts really lightly. Any of the H's, 2H, 3H, 4H, are really light in color and erase very, very easily when drawing. And I am just sketching out the beginning shape to see if I like this on my page as it is. It doesn't really come to an actual point, which is nice. It is rounded, it is soft. So I'm going to start at the top. The top is very, very light. It's very, very light. It's split in half by a vein. If you are learning botany, this could be really, really fun for you if you love plants. All the major veins within this are going to be light, so we are going to practice lifting, that lifting technique I talked about earlier. Now I'm going to start and draw the vein first. It's kind of a major vein, and I want to make sure that I don't cover it over with too dark of charcoal first that I can't then sort of back away from. Now it starts at the top and it starts wider, and as the vein goes down it gets narrower and close together. But if you want to make it wide, you can always come in later more with more charcoal, and that is roughly the vein down the middle. Very easy. Now if you don't have a dark value, here is our value guide. If you don't have a dark value charcoal stick, that's okay. Just press down and get the darkest value you can with what you have. If later you want to go back and add black colored pencil, add black paint, do whatever, make this a whole mixed media event, you could then do so. But today I'm just doing this tutorial for charcoal. So at the top, there is a little portion of it that is white. I'm going to kind of isolate that out, and I'm going to come down, and I'm just looking at the illustration. I'm going to have it over here on the left hand side. It starts dark, as dark as I can get this, and again, when you press down dark, you're going to get a lot of that powder coming off. That's okay, that's normal. And the left hand side is darker than the right hand side. The vein divides it. So I want to make sure that I express that in my illustration. And as I go, I'm going to kind of chunk off diagonal stripes that are going to represent these other veins that are coming down. And you can space them. You can have 1 to 2 veins. You can have, how many are in this photo that I can see? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You can have all 8. You don't have to have all of them if you don't want all of them. Some of them start to curve down a little bit. We're going to practice blending within these veins. Now I am just doing the major veins. This is a beginning illustration. If you are farther along in your art journey and you want to draw some of the side veins coming off these main veins and keep going, by all means, please do so. As this comes down, this gets a little lighter in value as well. So we need to make sure that we understand we don't have to press down as hard, apply as much as we're going down, but keeping those veins within this illustration. as best we can. Okay? So here's my leaf on the left-hand side. Now on the right-hand side, it is much lighter. It starts off a little dark, and then it immediately gets lighter. Okay? And we need to make sure you can have your veins line up. They can be mismatched. Your veins could be lined up in between, which is how they are shown in this illustration. They're kind of lined up in between. So if you want to pre-sketch your veins to make sure you don't forget them and you want them to come down more, you can always pre-sketch your stuff out if that is easier for you to remember where you want things placed, if that helps you, or you can draw as you go. And remember, it's the right-hand side and it's lighter in color. Certain little portions are a little darker. There may be folds and bends in your leaf. If you want to pick a leaf from your region after like walking on a hike or something, pick one of your leaves, but understand that when there are bends, little folds within leaves, there's going to be darker areas. So if you want to shadow underneath your veins and really make your veins pop out, you can press harder there. And then the tip is going to be the lightest portion of this illustration. I apologize, I'm using natural light, and it comes and it goes. So this is the leaf we have thus far. Now we decide how we want to blend it. I've decided that the detail is very, very fine. It's very, very small. And I'm going to find a blender that lines up with that width and space and height. Okay. So I am using a cotton swab. If you don't have one, you can take your tissue and you can fasten it into a point, and you can make a cotton swab. You can make a tortillon or a paper stump blender. I will find a video to make your own stump blenders for graphite, and you can use those as well for blending. But we're going to be really, really delicate with this. Don't press down immediately as hard as you can. You don't have to. Learning how these things blend out. I'm going to add a little bit of the charcoal to the tips of these veins as I blend it on down. I think the starts of these veins are a little bit darker than the end pieces. I want to blend this portion out. I want this a little bit more even. This is where we move the particles around and see what we like and what we don't like. We can alter shape a little bit. You know, if you want to make your leaf a little lumpy, if you don't want really fine, hard lines, if you want it smooth. Come over here. If you don't want to see the lines from where you laid down the charcoal, you can blend those out. Again, vine charcoal is very, very soft. I'm going to add a little bit of charcoal down the center. And this is my leaf. Now I'm going to show this demo again in another form of charcoal. I really want to show you what different charcoals can do. So I am taking my Derwent charcoal in medium. This is a charcoal pencil. This is my longest, darkest pencil, and we are going to do this again. And I'm going to show you how differently this blends, acts, and looks when I am done. So remember, we're starting with that leaf shape, and because this is darker, I am being as light as possible when I connect this to the page. I have very sketch type motions. I am not leaning into this heavily. If I want to lift some of this, if I decide I don't like the shape or it looks too lumpy, or I want it to come to a point, if I want to tweak it in any way, I can then choose to do so because I didn't lay this down heavily. Now I know there's kind of a little tip portion edge here. This is where it broke off from a smaller branch. I can denote that lightly, but this portion is going to be dark. Remember, we have that center vein that comes down. So just a little off center, you want to do your first line that comes down to the point, a little off center. And then your next line is going to be a little off center. It's going to start a little wider, get a little narrower as it comes down to the tip. If you feel more comfortable using a ruler, use the edge of some thick paper or the edge of a sketchbook or something to create that really fine line. That is also an option. Now, we're going to get dark really, really quickly with this value. Do you see this? You see how much darker this is? This is totally going to change the shape and look of our leaf, and that's the point. So, the left side, we remember, is darker than the right. And we are going to come down and we are going to start denoting those veins. And I can pre-sketch those if I want them to angle a certain way, if I want a certain amount. Maybe I like things in 5s. Maybe that's 5 family members, and this leaf would be really cool as a gift or a gift tag, or cut out with sticky paper or packing tape, sandwiched, and you can make a bookmark out of this leaf. Maybe you want to keep this design idea for another project, and you want to keep the shape, size, and color. So we are then going to come in and we are going to start filling in this dark value. Now, if you can see, it's not completely solid black. There's speckle bits. Botanicals aren't perfect in nature. They are not perfectly symmetrical. That is really, really important that you notice that the differences and the variations is what make botanicals look more realistic. So you don't want this to be the pinnacle of perfection when you go to create. And I am doing darker up in the corner, and I'm coming down and I'm getting lighter. I am blowing charcoal bits into the crease. You can see that here. There is a lot of particles. I could lift those with a kneaded eraser. I can wipe them up with my finger or a swab. These are all options. I can make a mess on my desk by blowing it away. That is also something I often choose to do. This is our leaf. These are the veins. If your vein is too thick, the greatest thing about pencils is they work for fine lines. Okay, you're able to do a little bit more detail work with this. And you're going to want to come down and make this as light as possible. Okay? Now the right hand side is lighter than the left, remember? So we're going to start dark, pressing hard, and as we come down, it's going to get lighter. Now we want to have our veins opposite the other ones. You'll pre-sketch those, you can sketch them as you go. It's however best you feel you can do this. And then I will show you how to lift if we make a mistake. So, I want the right side to be lighter than the left. I want under each vein to be just a little tiny bit darker and kind of blend that out. It makes the vein pop. The vein it's a piece of the leaf that is coming towards you. It is bumped out. It is convex. Again, that's gonna be a little darker. Again, if you have trouble listening to sounds, I apologize. This is not an easy medium to work with if repetitive sounds absolutely put you on edge. So for that, I'm very, very sorry. So this is our finished leaf. I'm going to take a tissue this time. And I'm going to blend out with my tissue. I don't want to see as many lines I don't want it to look quite as harsh. Again, most people have tissue in their homes, so this is not something you have to rush out and buy. And I am just softening up the marks I have laid down, kind of blending in the darkest point to the lightest. The darkest being under the vein, so the vein looks like it's coming towards you and popping out. And then we can then take any form of eraser we choose. And if we want to clean up lines that are along the side, remember not to transfer any of the charcoal. Again, makeup brushes can be fun for this. If you want to take your blender and add a little tiny bit of charcoal to the tips of the veins, so the veins look a little darker at the top, that also will add an element of realism. The more shadow and light you have, the more realistic your illustrations become. If you want the center to really pop, you go back in with your eraser and you lift the charcoal. And these are two different leaves. Now, if you decide, you know what, that's not realistic enough, I want these veins tinier, I want them more defined, I want to go in and add more vertical veins. If you then want to do some of the little lighter squiggly lines in between, and they look like little squiggles, they're not going to be symmetrical, they're not going to line up, some of them move, just kind of squiggle and eraser around. And if you decide, well, that needs to be blended in a little bit more. This is the benefit of charcoal, is you can go back in and you can keep working it to the blending layer that you like. You can keep adding, you can keep taking away. You can do this over and over and over until you get the desired effect that you want. You want it as realistic as possible, or you want it to look more cartoon, or you want it to look more design like a logo. There are different ways you can do this. My veins come to the edge in the illustration, they kind of curve around. If I decide I want to fix that, I can then redraw lines and then lift and blend. And I can change the angle of those veins through doing this with charcoal, and just keep going back in and creating the leaf the way I want it to look. I want this to be more arced. I can go back in and lift, I can go back in and draw. That is charcoal. This is a leaf. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope this helped you. Please practice those techniques. They can be very, very helpful when creating, when learning to draw, when using a wide variety of mediums. Practice your blending, practice your lifting, practice different shading techniques through hatching, cross hatching. It is all very, very helpful. If you want to draw with nothing but your blending steps, if they're really, really covered in charcoal, pigment, and powder, that is an option too. All of it helps. I hope you enjoyed this week's video. I hope you have an absolutely wonderful week, and I will talk to you later. Bye.